All right, next we're going to talk about attention-getting devices and closers. This is how we begin and end our speech with our speech structures. So let's move through the best and not so best ways to open and close your speech. The attention-getting device is the very first thing you'll say. You want the very first words out of your mouth to catch our attention. Unless you're giving a very specific kind of presentation, you generally should not start by introducing yourself. You probably shouldn't say, "Hi, my name is Patrick, and I'm here to talk to you about blank." That's a really bad way to start your speech almost all of the time. The best way to start your speech is with something that's going to really grab our attention from the very first words you say. The best way to do this is to start with a story. Tell a story from your own life, from a famous figure's life, from a movie or television show or book, but tell a story. Make it dramatic, make it interesting. Make the very first words you say grab our attention, and grab it with a story. It's always the best way to go. Another okay way to go would be maybe a quotation. Start with a quotation or a startling fact, and that includes unusual information, or a statistic. Bear in mind that those are not really great ways to start compared to a story, because they're not going to catch our attention as much. They may be good to add to a story, though. So what I like to do is often tell a story and then back it up with a quotation or a startling fact or a statistic. This way of a dual AGD is a good way to get your audience interested in what you're going to say. But most of all, tell a story. Now there's other ways, and these other ways are not so good. Let's talk about those. The worst way to start a speech is with a question. Do not start your speech with a question, please. Questions don't allow you to retain control of your audience, which is something you really want to do. You want to maintain control of your audience. And by asking a question, you lose some of that control. So I don't think you should ever start with a question. Hardly ever. Jokes are also not great ways to start speeches because you never know what's going to make people laugh or might offend people. Humor is good, such as a humorous story, but jokes are generally not a good way. The other way you don't want to start your speech is with a boring statement. What I mean by that is by saying something that's really obvious. Usually those statements start with the term everyone. Everyone here has watched a video on YouTube before. Not a good way to start your speech because it's just true and not interesting. You want the very first words you say to be very interesting. So start a speech with a story. Maybe back it up with a quotation or a statistic or startling fact, but never start your speech with a question. The book we are using also refers to these two ways of starting your speech, referring to the occasion or referring to the audience. I actually don't think you should do that in your AGD because it's kind of boring. I like referring to the occasion or referring to the audience somewhere in your introduction, but generally after the story you tell at the beginning of your AGD. What about closers? A closer is how you end your speech. You should, if you can, tie back to the opener. So if you started with a story, end with that same story or refer back to it in some way. Something I really like to do is called a bookend narrative, in which you take a story and you find a part right before the climax of the story, which you will then leave a cliffhanger at the beginning. So you start your story at the beginning with the AGD, and then halfway through you stop the story in the beginning of your introduction, and then you come back to it and finish the story in your closer. It's a really great way to retain the attention of your audience. If you aren't going to use the tie back to your opener, you can use any of the other AGD options. You could end with a quotation or another statistic or startling fact. Although you don't want to introduce too much new information into your conclusion. All of your really fresh information should be in the body of your speech or maybe in the introduction in order to introduce your topic. All right, so that is all we're going to learn today about attention-getting devices. Next time we're going to learn about the order of structure. So look forward to seeing you with that.